Hello, welcome to the webinar. The future of sales, marketing, and support is workflow automation, presented to you by Trey. I want to jump right in and get started in the demo. First, let's cover a few housekeeping instructions. First off, all the audio is in listen-only mode, so if you have any questions whatsoever, submit them via the webinar software chat over in your left-hand corner. We'll stop for questions if they're pertinent to the section we're in. Otherwise, we'll hold them towards the end. We've got plenty of time in our 45 minutes to cover questions, and please ask them. We'd love to help you out on integration and automation. And then last off, you don't need to take any notes because we'll record the session and email it to you a few days after today. With that, let me introduce our speakers for today. This is Alex Ortiz. I'm the VP of Marketing at Trey, and I bring 15 years of experience in software working at high-growth companies like Salesforce, Host Analytics, QuanticMine, and a few others. And I'm not just the marketer here. I'm also a customer. We're automating many of our own processes internally, as you would imagine, and have a lot of passion for this because I've struggled really in a lot of prior roles, prior marketing teams with a lot of disconnected software and data that was hard to move. Joining me today is Andrew Wiseman, our customer success engineer. He's really worked alongside a lot of our customers to automate a plethora of processes. Andrew, would you like to say hi to the...
Hey guys, happy to be on this journey with you today. I come from a background of engineering and business process modeling and management. I'll be walking you through some of the flows you can build on Trey in parallel with some business use cases.
Great, thanks Andrew. And I'll just do a quick roundup of the topics we'll cover today. First, we wanted to highlight for you the processes that teams are automating today. We'll just highlight a few just to give you a taste, just to kind of spark some ideas for you. And of course, there's many more that we're not able to highlight in this short time that we're with you. But we thought we'd cover an example workflow for marketing, for sales, and support. Obviously, we have other teams in IT, in business ops that are also using Trey. Again, we'll cover that in other documentation, and we'll point you to other resources where you can read up on that. And of course, we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end. With that, the question on a lot of people's minds today are, what are people automating? What are they integrating? And what we see is that companies of all sizes are really diving into this integration automation world, and it doesn't matter what size you are. We have customers as big as IBM with 380,000 employees automating, and then fast-growing companies like Chartia with 38 employees. So no longer is integration relegated to big companies and big IT departments. Really, the big story today in 2017 is that anyone can integrate and automate their processes, and that's really been a growth driver for many of these companies. In terms of the processes that they're automating, it's really a lot of different ones. In marketing, we see people automating every piece of their lead management processes. That means automating lead scoring, lead enrichment, and lead routing. And they're doing it with a customized approach rather than just buying off-the-shelf products and hoping that the black box does what they need. They're really using a flexible platform like Trey to build processes around their company rather than the other way around. Another interesting use case that I'll point out is that Trey built a happy customer detection process. And this is really to fuel our customer marketing programs. And I'll say it's been on my backlog of things to do at the last 3 companies I've been working at as I've led that part of the marketing team. And so I'm really happy that now I can pinpoint happy customers through NPS surveys to invite them to participate in marketing programs. In sales, we see companies like Forbes automating the RFP process, which tends to be not everyone's favorite process to manage. And they've done it by integrating Salesforce and Slack to give the teams that need to fill out that RFP ample time, ample lead time to really complete winning RFPs that have increased their win rate. We see companies automating sales enablement and swag automation, and in fact, that'll be the first customer success story we'll share with you. We'll highlight how they're doing that. On the support side, support teams are automating post-sales processes. So one of our customers, Vox Media, after they close a deal, they've integrated Salesforce and Asana to make sure that the post-sales experience for that brand new customer is seamless and smooth. We see customers that are choosing best-of-breed technology and integrating them. For example, we have some customers that choose to use Zendesk for their support application, and of course their sales team still uses Salesforce. And this way, by integrating those two systems to be in sync, each team can choose the best software for their department. Over the business ops side, we see large companies using Tray to integrate CRM systems from all the different companies they've acquired over the years. Some companies have 10 to 20 different CRM systems. Sometimes it's different instances of Salesforce. Sometimes it's a different CRM from Sugar CRM or Microsoft Dynamics, and they need to be able to integrate a heterogeneous environment across their companies. So these are just a few examples. There's many more. We couldn't fit them onto one slide. But now we'd like to transition and talk about 3 examples in particular. And the first one will be in the marketing side of the house. And we'll cover what Dan Amati, the Director of Demand Gen at Outreach, is doing. And Outreach, just so you know, is a software to automate the SDR and sales function. And we use it here internally. So we're actually a customer of Outreach as well. And I can say it's really benefited our sales organization. What Dan saw with the opportunity to automate his sales and marketing processes was actually 13 different use cases. Today we'll just highlight 3. The first off was he wanted to automate lead list uploads. And this is really, goes to the heart of marketing, driving leads and MQLs. And the faster you could bring those lead lists in from vendors, such as event vendors or other lead list vendors, the faster your salespeople can follow up and your conversion rates can go up. In a minute, I'll invite Andrew to show you what this looks like in Tray, so I'll not spend more time on that. The second use case that I thought was super interesting was that Dan automated the sending of nurture gifts to promising prospects. Before that, basically what happens in most companies is you have a sales rep working a deal, they're not quite ready to buy. He turns around to his marketing partner and says, hey, can you send them, the swag from, XYZ over to Acme Co. And the market has to stop what they're doing, put in an order, and it's very labor intensive. What Dan has been able to do is use the APIs of Salesforce and some of those swag vendors so that the rep can just press a button within Salesforce and the gift is sent, saving everyone a lot of time and making sure that their nurture programs are the most effective they possibly can be. So that's a really cool one. And the third one is about sales enablement. And oftentimes, whether you're selling software or media or whatever, it's a competitive environment out there, and your sales reps know who they're up against. And if they're using Slack, they're probably commenting on, hey, I'm in this deal, I'm seeing competitor X, yet your people that can support that sales rep doesn't know that conversation's happening. So what Dan built was just a very quick and easy automation to alert the sales enablement professional that a deal was happening where their assistance could be used. And it flags them, it brings them into the Slack channel, they can go in there and help that sales rep win the deal. So here's just 3 quick ones out of 13 that Dan has automated across sales and marketing. But I'm sure you want to see what this looks like. So for that, I'm going to pass it over to Andrew.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. I'm going to share my screen and show you what this is going to look like configuring on Tray. So at this point, you'll have had a Tray account. The solution that Dan at Outreach has done with the lead list uploads, we've built a template for because we find it really useful and a really repeatable solution. So what you'll do is navigate to your dashboard. look in our library. So we're going to filter by service and look at Marketo. And we're going to pick the sync CSV with file rows on an FTP server to Marketo as leads template. So if you click into this, there's a little kind of information about what's going to happen once you install the template. Essentially, how information from your CSVs will be synced into Marketo and what record type they'll be synced into. So to use the template, we're just going to click Use Template. Name it whatever we want. So I'm going to name it My October Marketo Demo. I'll just do My Demo. At this point, you'll be walked through a quick configuration tab. You'll just walk through a few steps. It'll show you which fields from the CSV file will automatically be synced over. This is the key here is all of this is very easily configurable. Most of our clients don't use strict out-of-the-box solutions, and that's how we differ from other more point-to-point integration services. We essentially offer you a template, which is a framework to build on. So once you look at this, you'll quickly realize how to use the system, how to change the field mappings to do exactly what you want to do, such as transform data, validate email addresses when they're being passed in. So you have a list of 1,000 emails that came in from something such as Oracle Open World that's happening right now in San Francisco with us. You can parse that entire CSV file, and every email you can parse through a validation service, whether it's an external API or our built-in validation service. And if it's not valid, you don't sync it over because you don't want to handle it. At this point, I'm not going to be passing data on this demo, but you just add a quick authentication to your FTP client, which you'd be hosting your CSVs on. And at that point, you would specify the path where your CSVs are held. And that's pretty much all you'd have to do to configure this. I believe the only last step would be to authenticate it to Marketo, which is easy as adding very basic information that can be found on your Marketo dashboard. But this is a very simple workflow. Essentially, all it does is connect to your FTP server. It downloads the CSV file. We parse it with an internal connector where we grab all the details and turn it into a format that we can accept, which is JSON. And we've chosen JSON because it's very easy to manipulate. It's very easy to drill down into the data structures and pinpoint specific attributes that you'd like to manipulate and change how you'd like to pass those attributes. Transform them, skip them, whatever is your preference. So we get a list of all of the CSV rows that we'd like to do. We split it into batches of 300. Obviously, since we're an API connection service, we're very cognizant of API limitations. Marketo can have a low API limit depending on your data throughput levels. So we've decided to upload to Marketo in 300 record batches, just so I believe that's the max that they can accept per batch for this specific type of upload. So what we do is we use our list helper here, and we get a list of page numbers, paginating into 300 records per page. We loop through that paginated set. So this process is once for each set of 300. We grab 300 rows from the CSV file. We do a quick formatting for Marketo, which essentially just, it's a quick script step that we have in here, where we kind of do a little bit of data mapping. So, phone equals phone number, and that type of stuff. So you see out of the box, it's a very simple one-to-one, but it would be very easy to say something as, say we wanted to add a Boolean here, and we said, email valid, and if it is, then we upload it to Marketo, so that follows the true branch of this Boolean. If it's not valid, then we don't upload it. So every loop, we could loop through a single CSV row, pass any of this validation logic in that we want. We could do something such as our text helpers here, where we can add a condition that says, is email, pass in an email address from our loop, like this. So we just do loop1.value. And then we can say if the result of this text helper, let's label this just for email, check, email. So if this is equal to true, it returns true or false if the email is valid. Then we follow this branch. If not, we follow the other branch. And at this point, we do an update to Marketo, create or update multiple leads. We pass in the whole lead list, which comes from the script connector. If you want to pass them in by one, it's easy to just pass in individual attributes, so we can do custom data mappings to different attributes in Marketo. Kind of any property that you have in your Marketo instance, you can easily map to, including custom properties. And the idea here is to imagine this as not just a lead list import device. Imagine anywhere else that your data might live where you want to get it into Marketo. Say you have it living in a database such as Redshift, Postgres. We can connect to that. Whether you're just signing up for Marketo and you want to take an entire data set out of your database where you've been kind of simulating a Marketo instance and map that in, whether you're using a competitor and you want to map that in, it's really the idea that we can connect to any API service, pull that data set, and map it in from an enrichment perspective. A great example of how we use this internally from an external API is we have a connection to G2 Crowd. So we use our webhook connector, which can be configured by switching out this trigger here to the webhook. So we've essentially just passed our workflow public URL into G2 Crowd. And whenever a new lead comes in through G2, we catch that lead, process it, and pipe it into Marketo. So there's nothing manual to do. We don't just get an email and have to type it in. And it really speeds up our process internally. And this Marketo can easily be swapped out for your CRM or any other type of program that you're using. And it's as simple as searching in the list of connectors for whatever other service you find relevant to you.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. That was informative on how companies like Outreach are automating the ingestion of leads. And this is one that we follow internally as well. So we learn from our customers as much as they learn from us. Next up, I wanted to talk about our next case study, and it's a sales one. And it's a familiar one for many who have a website and use a web chat off their marketing website. In this case, Chartio, which is a cloud-based business analytics solution that allows everyone to explore their data and create business dashboards. The challenge for Tom Melbourne, the VP of Sales there, was that leads were getting orphaned in their web chat software, and they use a chat software called Intercom. There's plenty of different other vendors out there, whether it's Olark or a few others, but this is a common issue among sales and marketing, and that is people are chatting in there, but that information is not getting piped over to the CRM system, and in this case, they're using Salesforce. Well, that's just a lost opportunity right there. If you're having people engage with you, but you're not collecting their email, you're not following up, it's really just a loss of time and effort for the sales team. So what Tom wanted to do is obviously integrate those two systems, and he was able to do so with Tray. And what he also did was save himself a lot of time. He first tried out what I'd call a very SMB, simple integration platform that didn't have the sophistication to handle some of the more challenging aspects of this integration. And sometimes it's because the APIs at different software vendors are a little bit more challenging than others. And so really he benefited from a robust platform like Tray that could handle almost any API. And so he was able to save himself from hitting a dead end like he did with a prior solution. But I'll not explain how this works. Better yet, let's see how it works. So I'll pass it back to Andrew to show you what this workflow looks like.
Great. So again, we have a few pre-configured templates that can sync Intercom leads into Salesforce, new Intercom users, whether you want just brand new information coming into your Intercom to be synced into your Salesforce so that all of your leads are preserved, or whether you want information synced back from Salesforce into Intercom so that your support reps know the account value of the person they're talking to, what type of support plan they're on, anything like that that you think might be relevant. Even maybe you have a custom time zone saved in Salesforce, so you know when they're going to go to bed. It really completely depends on your use case. All you really have to do is install one of these templates. I think for this demo, we're just going to kind of show you a high level of what the logic looks like. The templates are kind of very wide sweeping. There's a lot of individual use cases that we cover with Intercom and Salesforce simply because it's a popular case. And again, like the previous example, they're really just there as a template for you to install and build on and decide which attributes are important to you and what your highest priority data is. But the key idea behind this is that not only is data in Intercom important, data in a lot of your services are important depending on what types of reps you have looking at your data. So if you want your sales reps to be in front of the most current up-to-date system information that's coming in from multiple systems, maybe you have information coming in from Segment that's click events on your website. Maybe you have information coming in from Intercom that's when a user signed up, how often they're visiting your site, whether they've subscribed or unsubscribed from emails. And also maybe you have a database that's connected that stores information about these users that's specific to an internal API for your product, such as how much memory they're consuming, and maybe memory is an upsell technique for your reps. What Trey can do is connect to these services and then any other API using our universal connector, and we can build internally a lead record for that lead. You can easily store this lead record within Trey. For this example, we're just going to use our local data storage so we can quickly grab the attributes and process them and then sync them into your CRM. But this can easily be swapped out for your CRM for you to aggregate all of your disparate data sources and store them into a single source of truth, such as Salesforce, Pipedrive, as a single view for your reps to see. But the example I have here is a lead scoring example. So we score leads based on as many data attributes as we can find. Everything's important. Everything has its own weight. Trey can locally store an aggregation of all of these attributes on a single lead record within our system. Whenever a new attribute comes in from any of the connected data sources, we take this new changed set and send it through a scoring algorithm that you will custom configure or we can custom configure with you. And this is just a quick data mapping and logic application on the Trey platform to say how you want to weight any attributes that are coming in from your various data sources. So for example, if a user has signed up more than 2 weeks ago and has also been seen in the last 3 days, maybe that's a high scoring user because it shows that they've been interested over a good time span and they're still very active in your system. Maybe number of sessions greater than 5 has a higher score for you as well because obviously that shows interest in your product. Whenever these attributes change, we want to make sure that the lead score held in your CRM is up to date with the most current set of attributes. So say you have your database has a change and your memory usage goes up to over 1 gigabyte. Your lead is rescored and synced into Salesforce. At that time, during that logic flow, a cool thing you can do with Trey is once a logical path is executed, you can take any number of events from there. So here's an example here that I've pulled up where as soon as the lead score is recalculated, it not only is synced into Salesforce, it also sends a notification to Slack that says to the rep that owns the lead that says, hey, this lead is hot. You need to talk to them now. They've increased their data storage, their capacity in our application. And here's a link to the lead record in Salesforce. So it's right at their fingertips and they can easily access it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. So there you saw how Chartio is automating, and actually quite a few companies are automating their lead management processes end to end, including bringing in data from the many different point solutions that we all use. In this case, it was web chat. In other cases, companies are using Segment for event data and so on. So that was really great. Next, we'll transition to our third and final use case, this time covering a common support challenge that many organizations face. And I'll share with you the story of Vestorly, which is an AI marketing assistant that assembles the world's best email newsletters. It's a fast-growing company, and they're adding customers at a fast clip. They had a big challenge on the support team in that they're having a really tough time prioritizing support because they couldn't see payment data sitting in the payment system, and in this case, it was Stripe. So the finance director, Jonathan Tartel, realized what he could do with Tray is integrate that payment data right into the support side or the service cloud of Salesforce, so support reps could see accurately whether or not those people submitting tickets have paid invoices. Oftentimes there's folks that unfortunately don't pay, yet still burn out our support teams. And so this is a way to detect that and make sure that they're prioritizing support to paying customers and customers that have opted into a higher level SLA. Of course, in a fast-growing company like Vestorly, they don't have extra dev resources to jump on integrations. And so this is one where Jonathan could lead it himself with a little bit of assistance from Andrew. So with that, let's pass it back to Andrew to see what this use case looks like in Tray.
Thanks, Alex. So let me share my screen again here so we can see what this looks like. Obviously, I can't show you Jonathan's exact logic about how he maps his data, as it's financially sensitive, but I can build you a quick demo and show you how simple and easy this is to set up. So, and the idea is it's very fast to configure, and once it's configured, it's very powerful, and it will process your data instantly. So let's see. Stripe, Salesforce, demo. So we're going to do a manual trigger just for the demo purposes. So when we click it once, it can go. Another common item is to do a regular interval trigger. It's a very common business practice to not want certain pieces of data updated midday or even midweek because it can have an effect on how things are assigned within your organization. So say a certain ticket has reached a certain priority, it might reach a different team of sales reps with that priority. So it's very common for our clients to do a data refresh every week on the weekend, and then on Monday the reps come in and have all their assignments ready for them. If a rep had an assignment that they own change priority midweek, it might be confusing. They might think something was awry. So it really depends on your case, but it's a really quick way to make sure everyone's on the same page. So we'll do a manual trigger for now. We're just going to connect to our Stripe and Salesforce accounts off the bat. So I'm going to drag in a Stripe connector. And then all we'll have to do is add an authentication for Stripe. Stripe uses tokenized authentication, so you'll just have to pull your secret key from your Stripe dashboard. So say we want to just, say every week we want to grab all of our customers from Stripe and update certain attributes from those customers within Salesforce. So we're going to use the list customers operation. Let's go ahead and do a time trigger just so you can see what it looks like. So we're going to say we want this to happen every 1 week. So every week, we're going to list all our customers. We're going to loop through that entire list. So loop customers. We're going to pass the list in with this drag and drop connector here. Just going to loop through all of our data. And then for each customer, we want to dig a little bit deeper into the customer record. So we're going to drag another Stripe connector in, and we're going to get that customer using the ID. So this operation essentially brings back a very lean data structure of all of your customers' IDs and some other very finite data that identifies a customer. This takes the lean data here and drills down deeper into it. So we're going to find a customer by their ID. We're going to pass in the ID from the loop. So this is all the data that's coming back from the Stripe list. So we're just going to pass an ID here. So get customer by ID. And then once we've retrieved that customer, we're going to map it into Salesforce. So let's drag in a Salesforce connector. So we're going to find the Salesforce record that's associated with this Stripe customer. I'm going to say find records. So it really depends on where you're storing your Stripe information, whether it's under a custom type such as a contract. But for this example, we're just going to use a lead. That's a bit of an atypical example, but we're going to use it because lead uses email address as a primary key in Salesforce. Usually clients storing Stripe information in Salesforce will use something else where either there's a Stripe ID associated with every client or an email address associated with every client. And that's definitely something we can help you set up to begin with. If you aren't already storing the Stripe ID, we're very, very good at taking your entire Stripe database and just creating those records in Salesforce and populating that Stripe ID off the bat, populating whatever key you want to use to tie those records together off the bat. So what we're going to do is use one of our Salesforce authentications here. We're going to find records of type lead. We're going to pull back the lead ID. And the conditions are going to be where the email of the lead is equal to the email coming out of Stripe. Right here. After that, it's best practice to do a Boolean and say, was anything found? Is there a record in Salesforce where that Stripe customer ID, that Stripe customer's email exists? So we'll say record found. So in this case, let's say if the record is found, we want to update it. If not, we want to create it. So if it is, we have to fill in this Boolean. So record found. So if this total count, which means that the total number of records returned is greater than 0, then we're going to update that record because it says something was found. If not, we're going to create. So to update a record, we're going to just type in the update operation. The record type is going to be a lead. The record ID we want to update is going to be the ID that we returned in this find Salesforce find records step right here. So we just pass in the lead ID. And then the records fields can be anything that exists in Salesforce. We have a drop-down list here that pulls your Salesforce account and pulls back any custom fields that you've added to this specific record type. We can pass in any custom fields from Stripe to that record type as well. So let's say we want to pass in, budget. And the value comes in from Stripe. And we can pass in any of these data attributes, as well as, since this is just a generic Stripe account, we haven't authenticated it. We only see the out-of-the-box data points. If you had authenticated it, it would pull the data points that were relevant to your Stripe account. So let's just use currency. We can just do a loose mapping here. Budget, currency, you get the idea. You can pass in any of these fields. Say you wanted to pass an address and you were storing address in Stripe. We'll say maybe it's stored under shipping. So we would update that record with any new information. Otherwise, we'd do a very similar idea. We would just create a new record. We'd create a lead, and we would do the exact same data mapping, pass in the same fields from this Stripe step. And this is a really great way to kind of separate when you have teams working in separate systems. Sometimes you'll have a finance team working out of Stripe and managing subscriptions, and you'll have a customer success team working out of Salesforce, and they need to know how much attention they should give to various clients, or if they should be giving attention to them based on their account status. You don't want a customer success rep giving a ton of attention to a client who hasn't paid. This is a very good use case for a general bidirectional sync here. It's a great way to not have to get to purchase seats in both programs for your entire customer base. Another great example that we use very commonly is Salesforce and Asana. You might have a project management team working out of Asana, and then kind of a more account, a different, more sales-oriented team working out of Salesforce. You don't want them to be in both programs, but you want your Salesforce reps to be aware of the status of their project that's being completed in Asana. So we can do a bidirectional sync there as well, where we move status information, task completion information, so that members on both teams have visibility into everything.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for that informative support example. I'll ask our audience on the line to start thinking about any questions they might have. But let me just summarize what you've seen so far. And what you've seen so far is that teams across every department and individuals who don't have computer science degrees are integrating and automating their processes. Whether it's Tom, who's a VP of sales, or Dan, who's a director of demand gen, we have plenty of other customers from other departments and other titles, special projects, community relations. All these folks who are the business leaders of their department have really started innovating their processes. And to us, it's not just freeing up your time from manual work, it's doing things that weren't possible before. And it's really been enlightening to me as a marketer who gets to work with a lot of these pioneering customers to see their ideas take shape, get implemented, and really just see the growth of their company. So we're really blessed to be in that position and that vantage point. So let's move on to the question and answer portion of the session, and we'll leave about, let's call it, 8 minutes for Q&A, and we can always wrap earlier if you don't have any questions. But I see one coming in from the chat, and this would be a good question for Andrew. And the question is, can I use Tray to stay below my API thresholds?
Yes, that's definitely a good question, and it's something that I touched a little bit on earlier with Marketo. But Tray, there are a lot of ways that we can manage your API limitations, whether it's doing a poll so we process your data less often, whether it's connecting to a batch endpoint on your API so that we can send bulk data and hit and do less calls. We also have a very common use cases where we have an internal throttling technique. So if you're sending a very large data payload at an API with a small, that can only accept a small amount, we essentially can create a localized queue and batch off chunks of that queue into your API as bandwidth frees up. So there's definitely a lot of different ways that we can address it. Depends on your business use case. It depends on the driving need behind it and how quickly you need that data to be processed. But we're definitely love working with you. We have a lot of really great relationships with the various vendors and services, cloud services that we connect to. And, if we're very good at communicating, when our clients need API limit increases, and that's kind of something we help put into their pipeline while we help their current clients interact with their current systems.
Great. Thanks for that, Andrew. I see a couple more questions coming in now. Let me see. I'll paraphrase this one, but the question is, at our company, we use an SDK. Are you able to take data from that SDK and route it to our email system?
Yes, that's definitely something that we could talk. It definitely sounds like a custom solution. We have a couple of clients who route their SDK to a cloud service such as Postgres and store all the information there. And so we have a couple of instances where we connect to a Postgres database that's populated with an SDK. We also have a streaming endpoint where we can accept data that directly comes from an SDK. So if you're able to send data directly to your database through some type of streaming endpoint, you can also send it directly to us, and we can take the format of that data, transform it into something that we understand, and then pump it to your secondary system very easily. And that's a great way to, having an SDK and wanting to get your data into multiple programs, it can be very labor intensive and engineering intensive to create in-house integrations between each of those sources, or try to even to communicate with all of the different customer success teams at these organizations about how they can help you configure. It's hours of phone calls. All we have to do is connect that data stream to our single streaming endpoint, and we already have connections configured with all of the services you already used, and we can do that mapping and routing for you.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. That was an interesting use case. Looks like the next question is coming in. And again, I'll paraphrase it, but looks like the audience member is asking about lead enrichment. And the question is, we're using a couple different vendors like Clearbit and BuiltWith to enrich our lead information to pass to sales, but we're having some challenges doing so. Is Trey able to handle lead enrichment and looks like categorization data?
Yeah, absolutely. Enrichment's pretty much the core power of Trey. We can pull in data, and the power to connect to multiple APIs in a single workflow and not having to have single point-to-point integrations for every ad hoc API connection you want is very powerful, because once we pull in data from all of your different data sources, we can use various methods to combine it together and then map it into a single lead record. And that has roots in the diagram I showed earlier where we did the lead scoring and having the single lead record. That is very parallel with the enrichment case.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. So next, I just wanted to point out where our audience can go for more inspiration on integrating their own processes. You can, of course, request a one-on-one demo with Trey. Just go to our website. You'll see that big blue button on the top of the site. And go ahead and schedule some time, and we'd love to walk you through your specific use case and see how that can get done in Trey. If you're looking for what other ideas are out there in the world, I'd point you to our customers page on Trey. We have case studies there that go more in depth from what you've seen today on some of the ideas that our customers are putting into place. And then also you can look at our blog. We are adding more and more content and ideas around how to automate, what to automate, and why. And that's also a good source of inspiration. So with that, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, hit our website, hit the Contact Us button, and we'd love to talk with you more about how to automate and become an automated organization